Deniz Iyigün is a proud Washingtonian and a member since 2024. With a fascination for flags and heraldry, he leads a Vexillology club at Lakeside School, where he is a sophomore and a member of the varsity rowing team. Over to you.
To advance it, it's the button without the arrow. Thank you.
Thank you. It is an honor to present my paper, Oar Blades and Flags, a Comparative Analysis. In this presentation, I will begin by introducing the sport of rowing and highlighting the similar circumstances and traits of oar blades and flags. I will describe the blades of rowing clubs and how they relate to flags and heraldry, then shift our focus to national rowing teams and classify their blades relative to the design of their flags. Before concluding, I will talk about how oar blade design can affect vexillography. In the sport of rowing, also known as crew, athletes propel themselves through water in specialized boats using oars. Unlike paddles, these oars are attached to the craft by oar locks on outriggers, and rowers face towards the stern of the boat in the opposite direction to that in which they are moving. Rowers compete in groups of 1, 2, 4, or 8, and in either sweep events, with each person holding one oar, or sculling events, with each person holding two. 8s, as well as some boats of 2 or 4 people, have coxswains who steer the boat and guide rowers. Modern rowing competitions, known as regattas, originated in the early 18th century and include side-by-side races as well as time trials. During regattas, rowers may use high stroke rates of over 38 strokes per minute, meaning that the visibility of their blade to spectators is severely reduced. Modern oars consist of a handle at one end, a long shaft or loom, a sleeve that fits into the oarlock, around which is a collar used to prevent the oar from sliding out, and a hydrodynamic blade. Rowing teams often decorate these blades with colors and simple designs that distinguish them from others during regattas. Similarly, many European flags, such as heraldic standards and banners, originated from the need of warring parties to identify the location and allegiance of combatants. Beyond the pressure of the need for recognition, which favors simpler blades, material constraints also affect blade design. Although the application of printed decals is time efficient and viable for producing blades with complex emblems, painting blades is a more inexpensive and often more durable option, most easily executed with designs that are of colors and simple patterns. For this reason, all painted blades must be simple enough to be manufactured by hand and in large numbers, while both painted and wrapped blades must be quickly recognized from a distance. This is similar to the constraints of a sewn fabric flag. A flag with fewer charges and colors is naturally simpler to create than using one with more of these elements. This need for simplicity and recognition is reflected in many of the oar blades of rowing clubs. Competitive rowing clubs face strong pressures to maximize recognition from a distance during regattas, and any blade design will need to be simple enough to be easily and cost-effectively applied. These needs for recognition and simplicity have led rowing clubs to adopt blades with simple geometric charges, such as those known in heraldry as the ordinaries, and which appear in many flags. OarSpotter, a third-party website that catalogs blades for identification, provides extensive documentation of the blades of United States rowing clubs, from which the following examples will be taken. Some blades include a vertical stripe known in heraldry as a pale. It may be equal in width to the other sections into which it splits the design, such as on the blade of the Delaware River Rowing Club. It may be of an unequal width, such as the narrower pallet on the blade of the Miami Rowing Club. It may divide the blade into a vertical division, such as that of New Rochelle Rowing Club, or create 3 different vertical divisions, which is sometimes known in heraldry as being tierced in pale. Likewise, single horizontal stripes, or fesses, are also far more common in flags and heraldry than they are in oar blades, such as those of the Charles River scullers. The horizontal per fess division is still found in many blades, such as that of the Detroit Waterfront Rowing Association, and the tierced and fess division into 3 usually equal horizontal stripes is present in several blades, such as that of Long Pond Rowing, though it is considerably less apparent than in many flags. Triangles, pointing away from one side of a design, which generally issue from the hoist of a flag, are known as chevrons in vexillology, but more nearly resemble a variation of the heraldic pile than the chevron. They appear with great frequency in oar blades, such as those of the Upper Merion Boat Club, though they always issue from the tip of the blade rather than that shaft end, of which I spoke earlier. The heraldic per chevron division, in this case the heraldic per chevron couched, being horizontal, is made distinct from the vexillological chevron in that it does not touch the blade's tips in examples such as that of the Minneapolis Rowing Club or of College Club Seattle, a local club here. They may sometimes be outlined by another shape, also resembling a heraldic chevron couched, resulting in a unique horizontal triangular division of 3 colors, apparently absent from any flags I could find. The blades of Olympia Area Rowing, Palm Beach Crew, and La Baie Verte Rowing Club all use this layout. The oar blades of rowing clubs also feature various of what are called mobile charges, or charges able to be placed on any part of a flag or shield, though they are somewhat less common in oar blades than flags, possibly due to material constraints. Some blades feature stars of 5, 6, or 8 points. Other mobile charges include this bear in a passant attitude, an arched diamond or lozenge ployé, a fleur-de-lis, a Maltese cross, a horizontal rhombus or fusel fesswise, and a gold disc or bezant. There do exist some charges, however, that are far more common in blades than in other media. Most notable among these is the bend sinister, a diagonal line from the lower hoist to upper fly that is the most common single charge in oar blades. It appears individually, as in the oar blade of the Greater Dayton Rowing Association, as a per bend sinister division of the field, as in the blade of Grateful Oars Rowing Club, and as a 3-striped Tierston bend sinister division found in the blade of Everett Rowing Association, another local club. The bend, a diagonal line from the upper hoist to lower fly, is also rather prevalent in oars, though largely similar in application. Another otherwise uncommon charge that is very common in oars is the vertical stripe at one side of the flag or coat of arms, its name's heraldic equivalent being most nearly the tierce or side, which typically occupies 1/3 of an escutcheon's width. In oar blades, the tierce is one of the most common single elements, often appearing in a narrower form at the more visible tip of the blade, as seen in the oar blades of Oregon Rowing Unlimited, Great Bridge Crew, and Rockland Rowing Association, where it is also fimbriated. These designs specific to oar blades, such as the bend sinister and tierce, are popular because they each present a simple and appealing way for rowing clubs to incorporate their livery colors into a blade design, similarly to the origins of many armigerous territories from the colors of a coat of arms. The recurring appearances of these formats in oar blades is comparable to the many flags, national and otherwise, that use common layouts such as vertical or horizontal stripes in their own colors. Another commonality of United States Rowing Club oar blades is the use of monochrome fields charged with the emblem of the rowing club, which is akin to the oft-maligned trend of United States state and municipal flags to use a seal on a bedsheet consisting solely of a government emblem on a field. I conducted an analysis of 588 rowing clubs blades taken from Oarswater. Blades were grouped into categories based on the previously discussed elements, in addition to some additional heraldic elements such as the pile, the per pal division, the base, and fimbriation. General categories were also made for blades with emblems, charges not encompassed by other categories, plain fields without charges, any mobile charges, and the use of an entire flag design on the blade. Some small categories of charges with heraldic and vexillological equivalents, such as the cross and the saltire, were included in an other category. The results of this analysis, which you can see on the graph above, show that the emblems constituted the largest category, followed by other charges and the bend sinister, the last of which was the most common single charge. The least common categories were the per pale and per pal division, entire flag designs, and the base, a stripe at the very bottom of the field. Moving on, national rowing teams represent countries in international events such as the Olympic and Paralympic Games, the World Rowing Championships, and other continent-level rowing events. Unlike rowing clubs, which lack pre-established symbols, national rowing teams base their blade designs upon national flags, sometimes modifying the flag to suit the environment of rowing or choosing other symbols. The blades of rowing teams national rowing teams can be classified into 4 categories: blades identical or nearly identical to the national flag, blades that are a mirrored or reverse version of the national flag, blades that use modifications or elements of the national flag, and those that are substantially different from the national flag in design. The first major category I have identified in national oar blades is that of blades identical or nearly identical to the national flag. Blades in this category conserve the colors, charges, and arrangements thereof from the corresponding national flag, merely applying them to an oar blade by extending the flag's design. For instance, the national flag of Belgium has a length-to-width ratio of 13:15, but when that flag's tricolor design is extended onto a much wider oar blade, each of the stripes is made to continue to occupy 1/3 of the width. A similar process is used for horizontal tricolors, such as the flag of the Netherlands. The bands are expanded to occupy the entirety of the flag, and their height is also scaled accordingly. Mobile charges, however, are not distorted. The oar blade of Switzerland extends the red field of its corresponding national flag, while retaining the equiline proportion of its cross-couped. The oar blade, flag, and coat of arms of Switzerland are an example of such parity between the different media, where one can create a banner of arms from a coat of arms and an oar blade based on that. The oar blade of Czechia, for instance, includes the flag design on the blade, but it fills the end of the blade near its shaft with white space, providing an example of a flag design that is not identical, but nearly identical to its corresponding oar blade. The second category I've identified is of blades that are a mirrored or reverse version of the national flag. While blades identical to the national flag have their hoist towards the shaft of the oar blade, these blades instead place their hoist at the tip. The blades of the Bahamas, Togo, Djibouti, and Samoa all exemplify this category due to their charges towards the hoist, such as chevrons, cantons, or tierces, which would be constrained by space were they at the narrower shaft end of the blade. Such an inconvenient placement and the reduced size resulting from it would both have harmed the visibility of the blade from a distance. A similar rationale can be inferred from the blades of Malta, Mongolia, and Namibia, the latter of which you can see at the bottom, which are all derived from flags with mobile charges that are offset to the hoist. The oar blade of Zimbabwe, it is worth noting, is divided between sections of green, yellow, red, and white by a black zigzag line in the shape of a reversed letter Z, likely referencing the first letter of the country's name. Seemingly, the reason for this reversed appearance is a differing understanding of what the obverse side of a flag corresponds to in an oar. This is an example of how the creation of oar blade designs is ultimately decentralized and decided upon by individual teams, between whom ideas on topics such as the equivalent of a flag's obverse side can differ. In the case of Zimbabwe, the obverse corresponds to a port oar viewed from the stern, or a starboard oar viewed from the bow, whereas most teams consider it to the opposite, a port oar viewed from the bow or a starboard oar viewed from the stern. You can see these corresponding sides on a rowboat in the image shown here. Overall, these oar blades with reverse national flag designs demonstrate this paramount importance of visibility and the differing perceptions of design that can occur in oar blades of direction. My third category consists of oar blades that use modifications or elements of the national flag. Blades in this broad category may modify a flag by rotating, scaling, or distorting the flag and its elements, or by adding and removing charges. The blade of Bulgaria rotates its national flag so that its base is towards the oar shaft. The blade of Vanuatu simplifies a mirrored version of its flag design by removing the boar tusk and cycad fronds. The oar blade of Turkmenistan mirrors the crescent and stars while removing the carpet patterns and olive branches. Many of these simplifications occur because complex emblems are significantly more difficult and costly to print onto an oar blade than onto a flag. The oar blade of Iran also simplifies some elements, removing the takbir from the edges of each band. This may be intended both to reduce manufacturing costs and to avoid allowing the takbir to enter water. The oar blade of Japan may be the only example to add charges onto a national flag rather than subtracting, in this case adding two red bandlets to the shaft side of the oar. A possible reason for this is to increase the visibility when the blade is buried in the water. Oar blades in the same category may also use elements of the national flag. Some use the colors of a flag, as the oar blade of Uganda reduces its flag into a horizontal tricolor of black, yellow, and red, identical incidentally to the flag of the Uganda People's Congress, which inspired the template flag. The oar blade of Pakistan uses the colors of its national flag in the form of a green field with a horizontal white stripe, possibly to make its blade symmetrical. To similar effect, the oar blade of Moldova eschews its coat of arms and uses a horizontal version of its simple tricolor. Other oar blades may use the charges and symbols of a national flag as the elements that inspire an oar blade, rather than its colors. The oar blade of Panama retains the red and blue stars while opting for a blank field rather than a quartered field. And the blade of Korea retains the central taguk from its flag while removing the additional elements and conserving its colors. On the topic of blades, which use both colors and charges from its national flag, the blade of China extends its stars and field from its flag across a diagonal sash on a white field, showing how many of these choose to retain parts of it. My fourth category, perhaps the most interesting, consists of oar blades whose design differs substantially from the national flag. Blades in this category have few charges and colors, if any, in common with the national flag upon which they're based. The blade of New Zealand consists of a black field with a silver fern frond between the country's initials of N and Z. The silver fern is a symbol of New Zealand not found on the flag, but which is popular in sports such as rugby. Besides this popularity, it might also be used due to the national flag's resemblance to that of Australia. Ironically, Australia itself uses its national colors of green and gold, which, unlike New Zealand's fern, which similarly to New Zealand's fern, are a more nationally specific symbol than the British-derived ensign that they use as a national flag. The Orblade of Nepal uses charges and colors from the national flag, but is made substantially different by the arrangements of the charges and colors on the vaguely rectangular Orblade. For this reason, it shows an interesting way that Nepal's flag can be converted into a somewhat rectangular form that is used by all of these other national Orblades. The blade of Slovenia consists of a white field with 3 diagonal rectangular shapes, colored white, light blue, and green, that are taken from the emblem of the National Rowing Team and Olympic Committee. They may reference the representation of Mount Triglav on the national flag. The blade of Taiwan, which competes under the name Chinese Taipei in international sporting events, has a horizontal tricolor of blue, white, and red, with a version of the emblem of the Chinese Taipei Olympic Committee. The use of this emblem is a reminder to us that Orblades represent nations in sporting events rather than on home soil, meaning that their design is subject to the same international disputes as these events. In some other cases of substantially different blades, such as those of Kenya or Bangladesh, it is difficult to ascertain a sufficiently certain reason for the difference. Nevertheless, these blades substantially different from a national flag can reflect dissatisfactions with a flag, such as the lack of distinctiveness of an existing flag, the prevalence of other symbols or colors, or larger geopolitical conflicts. To determine the composition of these national Orblades, I conducted an analysis of 159 World Rowing Federation member states' blades. Much of the Orblade data I used was obtained from OarSpotter's list of national rowing teams, websites and social media of national teams, photographs and videos of competitions, and an official directory of members of the World Rowing Federation, also known simply by its French acronym FISA or by World Rowing. This dataset, being of World Rowing members, included dependent territories such as Bermuda and Puerto Rico. Each national blade was sorted into one of my 4 previously discussed categories. My analysis shows that 62 of the 159 blades are identical or nearly identical to the national flag, while the second largest category with 53 examples was that of blades with modifications and elements of the national flag. Though this category is larger than the sum of the smaller 2, its consideration as a single group is warranted due to the similarity of modifying a flag and only using some of its elements. The second smallest category, with 24 examples, was that of blades with designs substantially different from the national flag, and the smallest, with 20 examples, was that of oars whose design is a reverse version of the national flag's design. The modifications and distinct designs borne by some national rowing teams' blades can illuminate dissatisfactions with a flag's recognition and symbolism, but the choices made in modifications can also be used to inspire a redesign of the original flag. For instance, the Orblade of Turkmenistan eschews the carpet pattern of its corresponding national flag, simplifying it to only the crescent and stars. The carpet pattern has been criticized for its complexity, including in Ted Kaye's influential vexillographic pamphlet, Good Flag, Bad Flag. A redesigned Turkmen flag based on the national Orblade would convergently arrive at the same simpler, albeit less culturally significant design recommended in that pamphlet. Another example of an Orblade design that readjusts its national flag is that of Moldova. This rotated tricolor was likely intended to both make the Orblade easier to produce and to distinguish the blade from that of Romania, which uses the same tricolor as Moldova, as well as Andorra and Chad. A redesigned Moldovan flag based on the Orblade would be one that prioritizes simplicity and distinctiveness from other similar flags. This would coincidentally resemble the attributed state flag of the short-lived Moldavian Democratic Republic. Though the blade shows the importance of distinctiveness, other symbols such as Moldova's coat of arms can also provide stronger and perhaps more relevant vexillographic inspiration. The Orblade of New Zealand, which is entirely different from its national flag, includes a stylized silver fern. This silver fern emblem is already an example of colloquial symbolism as argued by vexillologist Brian Cham, and it can be used not only in context of international events, but as we can see here, in place of the de jure flag. Similarly, oars can be used as a basis or an inspiration in the design of flags for non-vexilliferous organizations, including rowing clubs themselves. In the same way that national flags can be extended and sometimes modified to occupy an oarblade, the design of an oarblade can be adapted into a flag to represent the blade's users. The oarblade may be directly transferred onto the national flag, or, if it includes charges at the hoist, such as chevrons and tierces, reversed. When creating new flags in this manner, oarblade designs can be considered an originator or incubator of simple designs. On screen, you can see some examples. Of note is the fact that I have reversed the design of Indianapolis Rowing Center's blade so that its tierce is at the more visible hoist side. This reflects the reverse national flag category I have talked of before. Now, to conclude, oar blades and flags are fundamentally similar in how their designs originate from the need to identify competing parties, even despite long distances in motion, and in how their production and reproduction are easier with simple designs. These two pressures had advantage designs with simple and recognizable chargers and colors. The blades of many rowing clubs demonstrate the prevalence of such designs, which are comparable to heraldic ordinaries, as evidenced by North American rowing clubs, which I have analyzed. The blades of national rowing teams are often inspired by the national flag and can be separated into 4 categories. Oar blades, including both those that modify and replace national flags and those that represent rowing clubs, can be used as inspirations and considerations in the process of designing a flag for those groups. Overall, oar blades demonstrate to us how other recognizable symbols can be used in the same manners and circumstances as flags, as well as how designs can be compared and transferred between the media of oars, flags, and heraldry. Further research into this topic can investigate and compare the blades of educational institutions and clubs outside the United States, in addition to the flags of rowing clubs, in order to more completely understand the factors that impact the design of oar blades. Thank you for listening.
Do we have any questions? If you would please again wait for the microphone.
Thank you very much for that. I've never even thought about rowing blades. More obscure than emojis. The question that I had was, you mentioned about the manufacturing and some considerations for the production of these oar blades. And I'm just curious about, and I'm sure it depends on the size of the organization, but typically how many blades would they make?
In terms of numbers, well, at my school, our boys rowing team has, I think, at the boathouse, 6 racks, each with 8 oars. So that would be a large number of oars already on the boys team, not to mention sculling oars for those events with 2. So I think it would be necessary to create these in large numbers, especially given that the process of just creating one, were it to be complex, would be a very time-consuming one. At my school specifically, our oar blade actually includes that tierce, the stripe at one side of the blade that I described earlier. It's a maroon blade with a gold tierce at the tip. And I know that they manufacture those using spray paints and by covering up part of the blade using tape. And even that's a pretty Herculean ordeal to get all of the blades out and paint them that way. Although I don't know exactly what the scale of production is for larger clubs, as I know my school's is not exactly the same scale as a club would use.
That was a phenomenal presentation. I enjoyed how you combined a pretty new topic with good statistical analysis and a interesting conclusion. I was wondering, with the environment that oar blades are in water, is like an environment perhaps even more hostile to the design than winds or for the flags. Wind for flags is necessitated moving stuff near the hoist to avoid tail to fly end. Has something similar happened where, for example, brighter colors are used to prevent fading to exposure to water?
I don't think fading is a strong issue in the design of oar blades. If anything, a decal would peel off and the paint would, be chipped off gradually. I would assume that the paint would be chipped off more at the tip of the blade, but I think that ultimately the reason for painting the tip is not because of weathering, but because of visibility to spectators.
First off, I wanted to say thank you for this presentation. I never in the world have ever thought about oar blades in such a capacity, but that was very interesting. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
But I wanted to suggest that you get with Brian Cham and try to make a proposal for the New Zealand rowing team to put the laser kiwi on the oar. It's already got the white front and the black background, so we might as well make it more recognizable and interesting.
Absolutely, and I think New Zealand has a lot of seabirds that would also make fantastic candidates for inclusion in laser form. It is iconic. You have to consider that.
Thank you. You showed a few proposed examples of flags for rowing clubs derived from the oar blades. Are there rowing clubs that have their own flags, and are any of those in fact inspired by, or have they inspired the blades that are currently in use?
Great question. I don't have a lot of experience with the flags of U.S. rowing clubs, especially because they're not very strongly documented online and seem to be in a largely informal capacity of use. I know that in Europe, particularly Germany, as I found in my research, rowing clubs do have flags, which are, often kind of what you expect of the sporting variety, a fair amount of text, perhaps an emblem, but also the livery colors of the team are used on those flags. So I suppose, now I don't know which of those colors, which of the applications of the colors came first, the flag or the blade, but it is an example of parity between those media. In the US, I don't think that rowing clubs have flags that are nearly as categorized, nearly as codified. And from what I've seen, it's kind of just a plain field, maybe in one of their team colors if we're lucky, with the emblem defaced thereon.